appear to speak for themselves. Is there a way that we can handle this that would be more akin to how we might imagine Christ would handle it? Otherwise, what's the point of Christianity?
What's the point of having a conversation that just excludes most of the planet? Come on, guys, look up! Hello and welcome, I'm aronmsound. I'm so glad to have you back to the show. The show is Look Up, where I interject myself into conversations that not a single person has asked me to be involved in. And so, today, I'm taking a look at Jordan Peterson and Russell Brand, both extreme sides of the spectrum, getting together, hugging each other, touching each other's special parts, and saying, boy, I'd like to ramble around in the same little prison of thinking that you do. Let's hold on to each other. And even though we're from different extremes of the spectrum, let's act like we're not for the moment and talk in the same terms that only apply to us. And without further ado, let's go into the conversation as it's in progress, shall we? Because the more limiting the conversation points, the more limiting you can tell people life actually is. But that's the truth. So, in any case, like I said, without further ado, because I'm trying to get in, folks, I'm trying to get into these videos faster, okay? Okay? Is that okay with you? Okay. Let's give it a little beat. Let's give it a little place to go. I'm going to say, yeah. All right.
Whether or not that means he'd reinstate me is a matter of question.
Oh, he's talking about Elon Musk reinstating his ass.
The people who run the social media networks know exactly how to regulate them with any degree of utility. You know, I've probably read 100,000 comments online.
I bet he has.
And
which is funny. It tells me for a dude like him who so self-assured.
Things going on online that are, I think,
why is he reading the comments so often?
To the integrity of the culture itself. The biggest problem that I can see is that the large online platforms allow anonymous troll demons to rampage through society.
Yes, Jordan, that's called freedom of speech. And though we may not like them, we in this country are not authoritarian or totalitarian or religiously based political ideas. Although many people do implant their religious beliefs on the ideas of politics, there is an actual separation of church and state. Though most people like to ignore it or give you the wink, letting you know that they're including it so they get your agenda across. But the reality is, the majority of the planet doesn't follow the religion driving the conversation here. And it's this strange, unspoken control system that is nothing less than a prison of the mind, built for a few who would believe fairy tales and try to impregnate society with those fairy tales so all of us can pay the debts of this fantasy life. So much so that someone like Jordan Peterson would use his education and background to have you believe that because he has this, that he knows better. But in fact, it doesn't even work, this logic, in his own life. And how do I say this? Because what he's talking about is being banned off of Twitter for not appreciating the freedom of speech. And in fact, what he's talking about coming up here is a form of segregation. And I would say that Russell Brand is just as responsible and accountable in this conversation for not saying, hey, dude, that's segregation. Hey, that's bigotry. And you're just covering it up by calling people trolls instead of recognizing that, Jordan, you're the troll against the majority of the people on the planet. You would have us believe that somehow you're the example. It's amazing how privilege and limited skew will make you look in the mirror and say, I'm the prettiest poopy face of all time. I love my prisons. And look at how pretty my prison is. and try to sell you on that prison, so much so that, oh, my prison's safer because the tribe is over here. Wink. Don't believe that bullshit, people. Come on. That's what that is. Not only is it a form of bigotry that they'd have you accept, they'll expand onto that belief to say, look at how much I have through all of my limited quarters and nepotism. Look at how we bond together and make sure we're the only ones benefiting, and then have you fight amongst yourselves for the scraps while we tell you should be more like us. But we're not going to allow you in, but you should be more like us. Meanwhile, Russell Brand, no, he's not defending the position of the liberal-minded, or no, he's trying to meet the middle ground, so much so that he won't push back. And his pushback is so soft in this situation that essentially it's not felt. And healthy debate takes healthy pushback and a line drawn. Not to say you have to be cruel or mean or call someone stupid or idiotic, like I would call this guy idiotic and stupid for his limited point of view and prison selling. No, you can't do that in a debate because you'll lose. You do. And if you're telling me I'm losing my point, it doesn't matter, because my point is to drive home the point that there is a prison being sold. That we're limiting our arguments and conversations to this little tiny frame of, well, if you're a this or a that, then you this or that. No. Don't buy the suit. Don't buy into the BS. These people would have you emulate them for the sake of their own misgivings about themselves, for their own lack of self-confidence. They have to have a tribe to convince themselves that what they're doing is right. But as you've heard me say, if you need an invisible overlord hanging over you to make sure that you're going to follow the rules, then you were not going to follow them in the first place. And I say that assuredly because you can see it and you know it as well as I do, that if you need something imaginary to control your behavior, then your behavior wasn't going to be controlled by you in the first place.
With no cost to themselves. And I can identify these people quite accurately now. This will make a number of the people who are watching and listening uncomfortable because they'll be in the list of people who do.
No, what's going to make us uncomfortable is the fact that you're about to project what you are onto the audience instead of accepting that you take part in this as well.
This sort of things. The first thing is they have an anonymous name. The second thing is the anonymous name usually has something psychologically significant about it in a very negative direction. So it's self-denigrating, or it's demonic, or it's otherwise offensive, and purposefully so. And then the people who are utter cowards, likely to be narcissists and Machiavellians, resentful people sitting in their basement.
Utter cowards because they don't want to share their name, as they have the ability to make a point and remain anonymous. That's not cowardice in the sense that some people have other things to lose. Now, not all of us will jump on a platform and stand up for everybody else. But having a free zone to just be wildly yourself or another character, if you're threatened by that as a person, then maybe this is not the environment for you, and maybe you should stay home, because the world is filled with the challenges of what you might consider unrighteous. But if you're not going to be able to at least face it face forward and go, oh, that exists, and you can kind of slough it off, then how self-assured and sure of your righteous thought are you? Not very. You don't have very much faith is what it is. And I'll bring this up. These people who claim to have a lot of faith never have a lot of faith. And they need everything to be controlled, or else everything is terrible for them. Well, yeah, because then you have people actually trying to make you accountable for what you're saying, or they're calling you out and you don't like it because you can't identify them, dox them, and go after them. You think it's not being able to defend yourself, but the truth is it's people stopping someone like you from attacking them so they can freely speak. And, you know, I may not like everybody or what they say, as you can tell, but I do defend even schmucks like this, right, to spew his stupid, because at least we know who they are. Maybe we should make a law that people like this, who deny their own involvement in the process, maybe we should make a rule that they have to wear a clown hat or a wig, so we know who they are, because they don't want to tell us. Which, by the way, is one of the most insidious tactics of the entire modern process, is to have you believe that we can move the line more towards authoritarianism and more towards knee-jerk reactionism and extreme pull ourselves, and have that not be what's happening. Meaning that people would have you believe that it's much softer a response than it actually is, but these are very extreme behaviors. Exclusionary, prejudicial, and they're throwback to another time period that only lasted for a little bit, and it failed. But because it failed, these who benefited from that time period want to claw and hang on. When in reality, this person has very little experience in the outside world beyond their own tiny vein. And that's because it's a prison that they built for themselves so they can view the world from a tribal pattern and fight everybody that doesn't match their description of self. And let's be real, this is nothing less, in his case, than white Christian nationalism. Let's call it what it is, folks. I'm tired of it not being mentioned in the room. The red pill, the whole thing. In some cases, it's even more amazing when there is multicultural and when there's a mixed room full of people, and they're still pressing what is nothing less than authoritarian idealism, exceptionalism, and a throwback to eugenics that doesn't even benefit them. That's how sold into this prison of the obelisk that I talk about quite often we all are. I'd even include myself, because I have to take part in the system of the prison in order to smash it down with you. And I say with you because that's the point of what I'm trying to speak about, and what I'm trying to share with you is that you and I together have to change our mindset and break out of this patterned world that has been developed and programmed to take any single one of us and pull our individual sense of self away and sell us on a bill of goods that has us build a prison and then defend that prison like it's the prettiest poopy prison anybody's ever had. And you too can pull the wool over your own eyes.
Dwelling on their misery and doing everything they can to spew toxicity out into the world.
Meanwhile,
alone in their bedrooms.
This man's negative look on other people around him is also something else to take in consideration. How people like this speak about you, the viewer, the common guy or woman in their room watching YouTube. He doesn't see you as a normal person. He doesn't see you when you come up with a creative name for yourself as you, if you're a gamer or something of that nature. He doesn't see you as a human. He sees you as a loathsome character or creature, less than, and has turned you into an item or a commodity to be shifted into a zone of otherism, which is nothing less than what? What is it, folks? Bigotry! Yes, indeed, it's bigotry. And it's easily hidden under the degree of psychological examination that he would pretend to put on things. But in reality, it's an easy framing for him to fake you out and have you take his argument of prejudice more legitimacy, again, to give his argument of prejudice more legitimacy, when it's nothing less than the same old argument of otherism that sells books and fear, that has you pulling wool right over your own eyes so you'll run away and stick your head in the sand and not take part, so that people like Jordan Peterson can benefit due to their lack of ability, their lack of skin, their lack of humanity, their lack of capability to actually be the thing that they claim to be. They can't stand any pressure or defense mechanism that isn't what they want it to be. Sorry, I had so many thoughts in that moment. I don't write this stuff, by the way. It just comes out, by the way, as response. So excuse me if I sometimes.
They're just isolated people who aren't causing any trouble. But as soon as they multiply themselves millions of times using this incredible, powerful computer technology, they're not even human anymore. They're literally a demonic force. And I mean,
and this is also, at the moment he says this, now he's in fantasy world. Now he is imagining people as demons so he can dehumanize them. And he does this proudly and without even a second thought. He dehumanizes a whole massive group of people. So he doesn't have to think about the nuances or complexities of who they are. And he can actually put them into a zone where, anybody, by the way, who would have you believe a stupid idea would also have you commit an atrocity. And this is one of them. Because this is the guy, when things get a little more autocratic or things start to fall apart, who's going to be right at the front of the zone of like, we should be killing off a whole group of people. Because it doesn't suit him, because he's in fear of those people. I guarantee you. And somewhere in the conversations, I guarantee you'll find more eugenics language out of this person and prejudice language if you just go a little bit deeper at him. But I wouldn't suggest even giving him the time of day, because this is the face of hate, folks. This is the face of your and my prison. He's not just the enemy of a few. He's the enemy of the majority, because he would profess that only a few should live here, should be here, should exist, should experience happiness, can experience happiness. No, this man thinks that the majority of the world is a demon and he's a righteous person. Meanwhile, what is he doing? He's spreading hatred towards others, separating the otherism, making a prison and telling you how pretty his prison is and how terrible your prison is and how he's better for having a prettier poopy prison. Meanwhile, he's still shitting in the bucket in the corner.
In a technical sense, right? You and I aren't exactly you and I in this conversation, because we're amplified.
Okay, and here's the thing. Shame, insult, guilt need to be right. Sign language all over the place for the narcissism. Now, here is his, and this is where I have a problem with Russell in this conversation. He's not pushing back. This gentleman is proposing that they are greater than, and that those who hide their name and who take part in this process, his own followers even, are the lesser than demon in the world. So he's the greater than answer, and Russell's with him, and because they're part, they can have a conversation, but everybody else who isn't like him is a demon. I've never seen such insanity in my life where people will follow somebody who blatantly takes us back to a time that we should be working out from. This is adolescent point of view of your fellow human. And if you really have this dim view of your fellow human, you're the lesser one. You haven't come up to the standards of an adult yet. You haven't even been able to get out of your fight or flight baby mode because you're too afraid of others, because you don't understand them, don't know them, and so it makes you afraid. That's fine. Go back in the cave, but don't take part. You are from another century. Let's talk about otherism. If you really can't stand your neighbors, you can't stand that we live in a multicultural country, in a multicultural world where there's 8 billion of us with 8 billion different ideas, and that there's less than 1 billion Christians on the planet, and the majority of the planet has other varied views, and half of us don't believe in what that minority is believing in. As soon as you frame your conversation from that point of view of your religious belief, you don't just lose, you exclude everybody else, and you make yourself look like you're using babbled jargon that suggests the Easter Bunny or Spider-Man comics are legitimate history. And you may be like, oh, well, what about the Bible? Stop. Fantasy books are not history. Fantasy books of philosophy are not history. And if you don't know the background behind your book, stop telling people it came from some unseen force, because that's not just a lie. You are literally propagating a childhood story that you were told that because the other people around you went, you have a form of psychosis that is not unlike Stockholm Syndrome that allows you to just go, yes, it's true. I have no evidence of the I have a feeling. No, you're ignoring all the evidence. That it's even greater than that. You have so little faith that you would say that this is the other portion of it. The otherism brings people to say that their God is telling them that some portion of his creation is not right. In their own logic. It's insanity. Because really, it's an extremist point of view that says that they are somehow the exception and they're better in creation's eyes. That, my friends, by the Bible's suggestion, is proselytization. And those people live in darkness by Leviticus standards, if you follow that craziness, which, by the way, Leviticus, you don't even get me started on that. Maybe we'll do an episode coming up. I did find a website that has some, there's some stuff coming up that I'm going to share with you that good nature, folks. People are insane. And if there's a group of people watching the news programs that I've been finding, holy mackerel. People are believing the craziest nonsense, and it's looking more and more like there's a portion of our nation in the U.S. that wants to be Nazis. They want to be Nazis, and they don't want to say they want to be Nazis, but they're winking at each other going, yeah, all right. They just don't like the term. Oh, I'm not a socialist. Yeah, well, they weren't either. They just use that as a cover. So stop all that. It's so interesting, the convenience and the arguments and people letting, in any case, the point of what I was trying to say is Russell is letting this guy push exceptionalism, and Russell is not pressing back because Russell's playing with his belly button lint. Damn you, Russell! Damn you, Russell! Russell!
Times or thousands of times or hundreds of thousands of times. And so we're not just human, we're androids in some sense operating in a virtual space. And these online trolls have that power because they have access to an audience that they would never gather by their own merits. They are saying things that are derisive and...
Okay, so this is the other thing, is they would never gather of their own merits, so they have to gather together. Yeah, dude, that's how social media works. That's how tribalism works. That's how TV works. People gather together by the millions if they're interested in a subject. He would have you believe that is somehow the impact of people being less than is they have to gather together. Yeah. So what is it? So belief shows weakness? Tribalism shows weakness? Well, in some case, yes. Well, it's true. I would even argue that tribalism does show weakness because you can't be an independent. But the truth is by gathering together, we can defend our beliefs and standards and stand as a group. You don't like it because you can't fight against the larger group or the majority. By the way, yes, I did just vape. The show ain't for kids. So, yeah. That's what happens when you see another person vape and they're vaping and the vape. Anyhow. Two sides of the coin doing the same stupid crap. Looking at each other, throwing their bespeckled and bedazzled poopy pile that they've been keeping and painting for themselves so that they can throw their pretty poop and go, look at how pretty my poop is. Well, I'll tell you what, I don't want to be in the poop flinging even though I have to be. And it's crazy that I have to be to get anywhere in the conversation because it's becoming so extreme that people are not seeing each other like this in this fool's case where he doesn't see humans as humans. He doesn't see other people with empathy, sympathy, or relate to them at all. He sees himself as a greater than. He is Nietzsche's Superman complex incarnate. And in fact, he matches all of the derivative signs of the Nietzsche Superman complex. Ubermensch. Because also, if you didn't know, this guy is a eugenicist. And he looks for reasons to believe that he's better or he's from a better race out of his religious belief. Talk about looking into your own pants and pulling poop out and smearing it on your face and going, look at how my brand is amazing. Ah! That's what's happening here. And by the way, when you're sitting in a discussion and everybody has the same belief and you're all just nodding your heads, that's what you're doing. Might as well just grab a bucket, everybody just defecate into the bucket, and then scoop it on out and chew on it. Yeah, ew. That's what I'm thinking too. Crazy, crazy ass people.
Inflammatory.
By the way, Easter Bunny is king. And if you read in the book of Spider-Man, that's what you sound like. For real. Well, you know, DC Comics, number 23, Eagle Comics. If it's written by a man, then it's man-made. And there is not one single piece of literature on the planet ever found to be written by anybody but a human.
Absolutely 100% get them punched if they ever said it in public. Imagine that there's a hierarchy of unconstrained people.
See, this is the thing is immediately the adolescent mind jumps to, well, if you said this in public, you'd get punched. No, because he wants to fight about it. He wishes he could. He can't. He's the one who has to be restrained. This is a projection of self in his fear-mongering, in his direction, in his conversation, which I think is astonishing because if you really challenged him on his self, even though he believes these things on the outward side, I guarantee you this man does not actually live the life beyond the money that he would have you believe he does. I guarantee you he's henpecked by his wife, and in daily life, he has struggles like everybody else. Nothing is easier for him, and in fact, I'd say it's harder for him because he has put all of these mental blockades in the way, expecting something to be the way he wants it to be, and when it isn't, he's going to get pissed about it, or he's going to get freaked out, or blame it on one thing, or instead of going, well, that's how that is, and I got to learn how to avoid that if I don't like it, or take part in it if I do want to be part of it. I mean, like, there's other answers, because if everything is a battle, then you're just at war. And you want other people to be at war with you so that you can validate your ignorant ass self.
And there's a variety of people who are very unconstrained in normal social discourse would be able to keep themselves under control because of the controls that are there in normal social discourse. You lift those controls and they just go off. And so that's what we're seeing online.
Well, yes. Because online, we have a wide range of capability to say anything, and it means very little. And if you give that value, that popcorn mill, the penny arcade, the peanut gallery, which has always existed, which is why there's such a thing as a peanut gallery. If in Shakespeare's times, if the audience didn't like the show, they'd throw peanuts at the characters. There has always been an outspokenness. To suggest that that's not the case is some kind of idealistic, unreasonable, and unrealistic sense of the world. if you say something like I say something, if anybody says something that is going to be controversial or that somebody else has a viewpoint, there's 8 billion of us, expect you're going to get pushback. And if there's a lot of people that don't agree with you, no matter how sensible it is, Copernicus, Da Vinci, Newton still to this day. I mean, like, I had somebody ask me, a grown woman with 3 of her own children asked me how I knew science was real. So there's yes, yeah. I know. Okay, should I take a moment? A grown-ass woman asked me how I knew science was real. So, there's going to be all kinds. And there's going to be all kinds of reasoning and thoughts, ideals and concepts. And yes, a whole group of people could be wrong. I had relatives thrown into gas chambers and assassinated and killed because of a large group of people that were just wrong and gathered together. And so it does stand to reason that not all mob mentalities are reasonable. And in fact, as soon as you get past by the way, the psychology of mob mentality is that there's a lever point when the mob mentality takes over and we actually go to the lowest common denominator of IQ within the mob. Now, I agree with that. It doesn't mean that it's wrong, though, because it is a fight or flight mechanism that does get us out of panic situations. Believe it or not, as someone who has worked in egress, which is exiting for large groups of people, or safety exiting language, I know the psychology of these things, and it's pretty astonishing. And what it all has to do with fight or flight in the end. And Jordan Peterson is one of these great examples of, I'm going to be in fear of everything and tell you that I'm brave and my logic takes over, but it's all fear. No, man, there's another way. There's avoidance tactics. There's, which by the way, it's healthy to have avoidance. There's judgmental tactics that are healthy to have because it's part of fight or flight. Judgment, by the way, is the ability to discern safe from unsafe. Let's just put it at that. That's the simplest way to boil it down, so you know. So when people come, oh, why are you so judgy? Well, because it's that base ability of thinking to allow us to judge between X and Z and Y and A. Every once in a while, there are binary choices, but for the most part, most choices come from a skew Pantone that is wide, wide, wide and works to the nth power, meaning that it's multiplied. So, wow. I'm only 3 minutes into this video, and I'm just like racking him up. Just not gonna lie. This guy is the face of the modern white nationalist Christian. And this is the logic that would drive the loneliness, that does drive the anger, that does drive the compartmentalization and the segregation amongst us. So ignore this fool. He's just a baby in a suit who's afraid that things aren't like they were when he was a kid. And that's what it comes down to. I don't understand the world. So I found a bunch of people that are scared like me buying into it, and I keep wink, wink, hinting that it also is religious based, that if we all band together in this belief, that finally we'll prove everybody else was wrong. Well, guess what? You're not the majority on the planet that believe in belief system either. So,
and that has to be stopped. I think the large tech companies should be required to put in know your customer laws. They
You're an authoritarian.
Ban anonymous accounts, but in this way. Imagine that you have a section for comments where it's real
human
beings that are verified, and you have another section underneath that's for anonymous troll demons. And if you want to go visit their hell,
I'm sorry, the childish and religious-based fear troll demons. What is wrong with this man? And why do so many people follow him other than, he says one or two things that are right, even though the majority of what he says is insane and a throwback to Nazi politic. Let's just say what it is. Tired of people beating around the bush because they don't want to admit that this is hate politic. that is a throwback to the language used by the Nazis and every other hate group, including the KKK and white nationalism. And why don't we call it white national Christianism? Because that's what it is. I don't see a lot of Muslims pushing white nationalism. I don't see a lot of Jews, well, except for there is one. There is one. But occasionally you do find them, by the way. It's very weird. But, you know, self-hate is an amazing thing. It'll make you believe that if you, you know, tell your oppressor that you love them, tell the person that you hate you love them, then maybe they'll include you in the special club. Yo, there's more of us, of every walk of life, of the different in opinion, of the living life very well without your basic ass pumpkin latte rules. And there's more of us that will stand up and say, I'm mad as hell about you limited ass idea, prison builders, and I'm not going to take it anymore. Because the politic of fear would have you believe that you've got to put a smile on in order for them to feel comfortable about you being told you're less than, that you're some kind of demon, or that you're not human, because that's what they want you to believe without, and then have you smile back at them and be like, oh, that's reasonable. Oh, okay, thank you. Oh, will you respond this way? No, man. Just like you said, if you say these crazy things and you expect to get away with it in public, you're not going to, and the things you're saying are the things that you don't just get punched for, that someone puts you in handcuffs for, puts you in front of a group of their peers and says, this guy's been spreading hate speech. He caused X, Y, and Z problem. Because that's not happening with the rest of us looking at you going, what? Where do you come from, Jordan Peterson? What planet are you on? Talk about how fearful and stupid a person could actually be. You're from Canada, man. There's a totally mixed group of people that get along very well up there, although not, you know, the French really want to be there, but I mean, like, it's still individuality. You have to speak more than one language, freak. Yeah, I will call him names, brother. And yeah, I do speak in derogatory terms sometimes. You know why? Because too many people are trying to have a pleasant, pretty conversation while throwing shh at me. And you. And anyone that they don't want to defend themselves while they stand behind their prison and bang on their cage and tell you how amazing their life in prison is. I'm standing here on the outside with a sledgehammer and go, man, I'll break you out. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Hey, your problem. That's the conversation that I'm having. And you got to be able to do that. And say, calm down, bro Cephas. You don't have the right. Because your ideas don't include anything but yourself and someone that looks like you. And you would even exclude another gender. You would exclude half of humanity because it suits you better because you're too uncomfortable with anything that you don't understand, which is your limitation, not the world's, not reality's. That's your baby ass limitation. And I'm not going to let you sell that to other people. I'm going to come in between and be like, oh, hi. Hold on a second. Hold on. Yeah. Hi. That guy up there, I don't even know if he knows how to masturbate or make a woman come. So forget about the fact that he probably doesn't even, he probably avoids tasty foods. I'm telling you, this person is waiting for something after the fact that's never going to come to make himself happy. And he'd have you be in that misery with him. So, yeah.
And see what their resentful minds are spewing into the public landscape, then you can. Otherwise, you stick
I'm not
to
resentful,
the real human beings.
By the way, and personally, and him saying this stuff, I'm not resentful. And I may seem triggered and angry, but I'm always triggered and angry. It's part of the job. It really is. It has to do with the fact that he wishes that they were resentful of him. It's his own ego driving his sense of how people see him because he believes that he's exceptional. And that's the thing to get out of these things. people is you got to call it, oh, so you think you're exceptional. Dude, have you looked at yourself? Have you looked at yourself in the mirror? You're a gawky, goofy, didn't have any friends, probably still doesn't. Wife doesn't like him very much. And people don't actually personally respect you. And your limited view on the world has probably robbed you of so much actual joy. That's the portion that I get a real kick out of, is that these people, because they're robbing themselves of joy, would have you stand by them and rob yourselves of joy along with them so that they feel validated for their thievery from their own existence and experience. And you know what I say? I'm going to enjoy life. And if you want to come with me, look, it's not chaos. It's just not easy. And you got to be able to think for yourself and be fair to other people and be kind and be empathetic. It's complex and it's easier to be an ass. Yeah, truly. It's easier to lump yourself in with a tribe behind a prison cell and say, well, this is everybody I feel comfortable with. But you know what? That is the destruction of our greater selves and our greater evolution as a species. The human species. Let me say it again, the human species, because there's no difference between us except for the ideas of the limited-minded few who are still living in their caveman flight or fight or freeze mode. And in the case of someone like this guy, he's a freeze mode. Straight up. You want to talk about a beta? He's selling you on a gamma idea, trying to pretend that he's a sigma and speaking from the omega. And he's none of these things because everything is fear-driven. What I'm telling you, you don't have to be in fear of the limitations. You don't have to be in fear of those things. That only benefits a few. You can be the few, and we can turn that into the many. By lighting this fire on the facade, they would have you believe was forced upon you, when in actuality, we just simply accept it because it's easier to be lazy than to challenge the thoughts and to say, hey, you know what? Life has so much more to offer. There's so much more wonderful experience when you share, love, be kind, have empathy, see others as similar, and try to help the world, make it a better place. And then maybe we can look up and start focusing on these folks that would have us enslave ourselves into a mental limitation prison, and as I say constantly, throw poo at each other that we bedazzle. Nobody wants a bedazzled piece of poop. Although I am thinking about decorating the studio with a whole bunch of bedazzled poop. But that's a different, it wouldn't be real. No, I'm kidding. Or am I? No, maybe I should just get a video of bedazzled poop to occasionally like bling, have sparkle down. I think that's a better idea. That's more tasty.
I don't know if Musk and the other people who are running the big social media networks understand the pathology that's associated with this online commentary well enough to.
Once again, I don't know if anybody, like one of the smartest men on the planet, actually understand what's going on. I do. Oh, I do. But I don't know if other people, once again, exceptionalism, Superman complex. This guy thinks that he's the only one that understands anything in the room because of his limited viewpoints. He doesn't have respect for other people in the room because he can't break from that prison where anybody else is respectable, unless, of course, the few people that he does who happen to look like him and believe the same things already, which is even more fundamentally flawed in a character design. Because allowing yourself to fall into that is nothing less than walking into a prison cell and closing the door and asking for it to be locked on your own because you feel more comfortable in solitary confinement.
control it. So we'll see.
What I would like to draw your attention to, still sort of within the broad rubric of looking at Musk's acquisition of Twitter and how that may play out and how it may affect you personally. I was myself struck with, I think the tweet that you were banned for was sort of like commenting on Elliot Page. How do we prioritize compassion?
Okay, Russell, his commentary on Elliot Page was bigoted. Straight out. Don't care what you believe on the subject, the comment was bigoted. Now, either you accept that or you don't, but he broke the rules, and he had done this several times, and he was doing this on purpose to try to challenge the rules. So if you're going to challenge the rules repeatedly, at some point, there's going to be a repercussion, and you're going to have to be accountable. So the reality is this is a gentleman. By the way, I think this is a good spot to, should I? Here, this is going to be my screenshot today. Hold on a second. Oh, yeah. I'm loving this. Oh, okay. Hold on a second. Am I going to get that? No, I got to do it down here. My bad, guys. You seeing that? I hope not. Sorry. Give me a second while I do my tech. Yeah, there it is. Oh, yeah. How about this one? You like that one? Okay. Sorry. In the middle of the discussion, taking screenshots. How about a pointy one? Okay. Here. Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah, make it look like I'm saying F you, which I do several times. Oh, yeah. There we go. I think I'm feeling all those. How about you guys? Okay. Anyhow. Sorry to take the time. That was special, right? So the fact that Russell doesn't push back is a sense of that he includes himself in the exceptionalism of the conversation, which I find troubling at best.
Kindness, love, and can't this basic palette of principles prevent us from getting into conflict around these ideas?
Well, it isn't obvious to me that love can be reduced to compassion at all, because
it isn't obvious to him that love can be reduced to compassion at all. What do you think love is? This right here is also the sign that he may have some personality disorders that are involved with what they would classically call sociopathic tendencies, or I'm not a psychologist, but I can read the DSM. And by the way, the next time somebody says you can't decipher what I am because you're not a psychologist, if you have the ability to comprehend what you're reading, you can ascertain a list of things and objectively look across and go, wow, these match that list. These behaviors match that list, or they don't match that list. It's called having a sense of judgment and capability to judge for oneself. Now, to actually diagnose someone, put them on pills, that's a different story. So when they say, you can't diagnose me, it's not diagnosis. It's not diagnosis. It's having a perception and trying to figure out the answer to that perception, and having a subject model like the DSM where there's answers inside of it. And you can say, oh, look at this frame right here. Oh, look at that. That's actually, that gives me some, that's an example. Look at that. Isn't that amazing how you can find an example of something and use it, and it can be logical and sensible. You can even be objective about it by giving it its space and saying, oh, this is this one. I don't see that, though. I don't see that. But this is just my opinion and also my point of view. You can even preface it to that. And someone will still say to you, you are the psychologist. Yeah, well, here we have a psychologist who would misdiagnose on purpose. Would have you believe a whole slew of concepts and ignore the problems with his own behavior, because he doesn't see other people as human, even in most cases, unless they're like him. And although I'm being nice and calling it sociological or sociopathic, as soon as you disengage humans from being human and see them as a thing, that starts to edge on a little portion called psychopath. But mind you, many of the world's leaders and great thinkers do have tendencies of psychopaths or sociopaths. There are things that come with these behaviors that are actually healthy if you have a little touch of this or that. But in the case of behaviors where you can go into the DSM and go, oh, this guy is this, and make the whole list as they give it to you, well, then that might suggest that he is showing behaviors that resemble, mind you, being a psychopath. And you can judge for yourself on that. You have a brain. You have the ability to discern left from right, up from down. And if you have a comprehension level that's out of high school, you should be able to read these things and understand and comprehend what it is you're reading and go, oh, 2 + 2 = 4. This guy does X, Y, and Z, so maybe he might be showing signs. See the prefacing? People love to ignore the prefacing, by the way, which when people do that, that's when you know they're living in Fantasyville to sustain their own validity. One must listen to the prefacing because might be is not the same as absolutely is. And people speak for themselves in that manner. And that's where bias and slant comes from. So when you hear somebody who consistently uses language that makes themselves the exception to every rule, you know that they're believing that they're exceptional. And when they say everybody doesn't understand, or the brilliant minds don't understand, I understand, well, then you know that they, once again, believe themselves to be exceptional and others are not, because others are not as human as he is. So keep this in mind as I rant and scream at the screen. That the reason I'm doing this is because I would like to illuminate for you and bring you along with me as we tear down all of this system that's getting sold to everybody as if it's real. And it's not. It's a throwback to a time period where people could be controlled much more easy. And I'm saying break out of that. Everybody has a chance in this world so long as they don't let themselves get imprisoned by someone like this guy above.
For a variety of reasons. First of all, I think love is a multidimensional virtue. And there's many other virtues than compassion. Think about it this way, Russell. Imagine that the purest expression of
love is many things, but it's many things outside of compassion, but I can't boil it down to compassion. He's trying to avoid the base root of what a thing is, which is, by the way, called cognitive dissonance. And it says a lot about his character when he can't even include compassion in his mindset as love. And love is compassion. Let me say this again. Love is compassion at its base root, and he can't somehow find that connection. That, my friends, is that is exactly the definition of having psychopathic behavior.
Is the love of a mother for a true infant. We could really think about that as true compassion, 100% compassion. And the reason for that is that if you have an infant from birth to, say, 6 months old, nothing the infant does is ever to be questioned. The proper response to the infant is whatever the cause of their distress, you immediately prioritize its reduction. But then as the child starts to develop, and as soon as it becomes capable of its own voluntary movement, as soon as it becomes ambulatory, its nervous system starts to change. But then there are other elements that have to be introduced into the relationship to make it a relationship of proper love. And some of...
Okay, so right now what he's trying to do is deconstruct the difference in behaviors of how we respond to someone who is incapable of taking care of themselves to someone who then becomes capable of caring for themselves over time as they learn. He's trying to break out the way we treat other humans over the course of their lives as if there is a definitive line of compassion change. When there's no less compassion, unless, of course, you don't understand that because you don't connect to it. That level of compassion doesn't change. The behaviors with which we expect others to have for self-sustenance, self-reliance, standing up. I mean, like, that'd be like saying, well, we carry you around when you're a baby. We should continue to do that as you become an adult, or otherwise we don't actually love you the same way. You couldn't walk when you're a baby, then you start to walk. This is the simplification that would be convoluted by a false connection in the argument. And this is what this person is doing, is he is falsely associating two ideas that don't have anything to do with each other, although they sound legitimate, because in reality, both sides are legitimate, but they are not connected. It's called a non sequitur. It's a false connection in his argument, and it is one of the most conniving things that this guy does, because he knows he's doing it. Or I'd say he's that ignorant to his own psychopathic traits. And as a psychologist, shouldn't other people be concerned about this behavior? If he's a psychologist, how does he have a license if that's the case? Oh, because we don't judge psychologists on whether or not they're ill. And let me just point out to you that I have a relative who cured their own extreme mental illness long after they had a license to practice therapy. Let me say that again. I have a relative who cured, thank goodness, their own incredibly serious mental illness after they had a license to practice therapy for many years. So a mental illness does not stop people from practicing therapy or psychology or anything. There's no board that looks at you and goes, oh, well, do you see people as humans or not? No, they don't do that. So keep that in mind when he uses his psychology degree and doctorate and license, and he throws that around like it's some kind of, hi, Pierre, are you coming in to join us? Okay. When he throws that around as some kind of defensive weapon against his false logic and false equivalencies. It's crazy, because he would have you believe that he's more valid because of that. And I would say at this point, he makes himself less valid because he's not utilizing the system for himself. That's
judgment,
crazy.
Which is often considered antithetical to compassion. And some of it's encouragement, and encouragement has a fair bit of judgment in it.
Okay, so that's also another false equivalency. Judgment is not antithetic to compassion. Judgment is involved in the root organization of compassion, because you have to have a judgment of whether or not to be compassionate towards someone or not. Yeah, but it's like he's compartmentalized human behaviors to such a point that he doesn't recognize what behavior is human and which is not. Or that they're associated, that they actually do have roots in one another, or that they're compatible. That to me shows that he's not playing on the same planet you or I are. You and I are playing on the same, that which we be to and human. Okay. He's not here with us. Neither am I sometimes, though, right?
When you're encouraging someone, you're not exactly being compassionate for who they are. You're doing what you can to facilitate who they could be. And
so that's an assumption that you're being patronizing, which is funny, because I hear a lot of this, and this is someone showing you their cards and projecting. So he really doesn't believe that, apparently from his own words right here, he doesn't believe that you can emphatically support someone without being patronizing, basically. That's as silly and uncompassionate as it gets. That means that he doesn't associate supporting someone by going, you can really do this. I believe in you. He doesn't see that as compassionate. He sees it as just being patronizing. He takes the humanity and the empathy out of it for his own logic sense. What the heck is that? Oh, that's called being a psychopath, folks.
You're doing constantly when you're encouraging someone is prioritizing who they could be over who they are. And that's an element of judgment. And that judgment, you might say, if you're not thinking about it precisely from the religious perspective, is your own ability to decide which parts of you should go. Then the question is, are you compassionate for who you are? Or are you compassionate for who you could be?
Like that has to be, because you can't have all that. You can't be nuanced and have multiple levels or feelings about this. Something has to go. You have to put something out. Because that's the way he works. It's the craziest thing to me, because he would have you believe that the only way for anything to work is the way he works it, which is to compartmentalize to a point where he doesn't see things as human anymore. He sees it as an A or B binary position because of all the things he puts out due to his fear factors, which I'm still at the point where I don't get this logic other than to see it as an adolescent and behavior and lack of emotional growth. That this person stopped themselves from growing like in their teenage years and then got a degree in psychology. How flippin' dangerous can that? I mean, come on, folks. Can we not review these people? We should be reviewing him. And you know what? That's another thing. We should be hitting him up and going, hey, what's your degree in again? Where are you practicing? Who goes to you? Oh, people that you drive through fear. I would want to know how many people have you actually helped? How much recidivism is there in your process?
Just as important, or maybe more important.
And when that's applied to the self, I can see that the requirement for this judgment, the great success you've had in, clean your room, stand up straight, these kind of edicts offered to young.
But is it, Russell, are they actually successful, or are they just driving people in fear, talking about stand up straight, clean your room? What? Ladies and gentlemen, hobos and tramps, what are we talking about here? What are we really talking about here? We're talking about basic self-acknowledgement and believing in yourself. He'd have you believe that the only way you can get this is from him, is what he's saying, in the way that he gives it to you as he specifies it. And it's not compassion. It's just a forward thinking. It's just reason. There's no compassion, really, and you can't love someone because you can't support them and then be loving. It's not the same thing. You're just being patronizing. So he actually is professing nihilism, and which is very common, by the way, with the supermensch personality, is they will profess nihilism while claiming exceptionalism, which that is antithetical. So essentially, this guy is projecting.
And or young people.
And by the way,
discipline.
Russell's not pressing back. He agrees with him. He thinks young people require discipline, and we all do. But I'd say the two gentlemen in this conversation, outside of me, oh man, I can't get this because I'm gonna have to take a screenshot of it. There you go. The two guys outside of me are not having a discussion that acknowledges the agenda that's driving this conversation, which is religious belief and limitation in structure of belief, meaning that you only see the world through a lens that fits your compliant agreement. Meanwhile, there's 8 billion of us, and there's a lot more than you're scared, freaked out. People need more this and that. The young are different than I am. This is the conversation that happens every single generation. They aren't like me, so I'm going to otherism them, and I'm going to act like a psychopath and not give them compassion and act like you can't love and have compassion at the same time and X, Y, and Z because I'm different than you and you're different than me. Here's my prison. Let me throw some poop that I made fresh from my own ass straight at you and tell you I'm throwing cherries at you. Pearls of wisdom, Pearl. Yeah. Russell, I thought you were enlightened. You and I over here vaping together.
I can see the success of that. But Jordan, I feel that when it becomes an outward strike of like, this person should not have done this thing, this is the impact of these actions will have on the culture, this will lead to this kind of denigration, this will lead to decisions that are, in my view, palpably wrong. I feel that this is where we have to redress an imbalance around compassion. I feel that Elliot Page...
Wait, what? I know what he just said there. But instead of saying, what we really need to call out is this BS, he said it in such a nice way that basically Jordan doesn't take any accountability. And by the way, that's what's important in the discussion, is to get people to take accountability. There has to be some kind of leveraging language. I'm not saying shaming someone, but just putting it out there that there's a line drawn that you say, no, I don't accept this false equivalency. No, I don't accept, and this is proven to be wrong. Your behavior on this pattern is X, Y, and Z, and no, I don't know where you get that idea from. That is incorrect. You can tell people that is incorrect, especially if you can back it up, which Russell, Pearl, you can. He can. And it doesn't make any sense. Yeah, you see the bag? Anybody got a good little regimen for that? Write it in the column. I'd really like, I'm going to do a face regimen coming up here soon. Little tutorial maybe? I don't know. Because the bags. I don't mind this. I like that. But the bags! Go get yourself some bags. I did. Is this not what they meant? No? Damn. Pearl! Give Pearl a bag. Anyhow, what was I saying? Where are we? Oh, goodness.
Page should be able to do whatever Elliot Page wants to do.
Truth.
And that my only role is to say, I recognize that I don't understand, and why would I understand? There are less obvious things that you could never
It took Russell this long to come around and stand up and be like, dude, people be people, human are human. Let me quote Brittany Simon. Human's gonna human. And then follow it up, Russell. Can you do this for me, please? Follow it up with and it doesn't seem like you can handle that very well. You seem like you have a very thin skin to the fact that human's gonna human. By the way, why does it look like I didn't shave on this side? Is that the lighting? It is. It's the lighting. It's more of a blue tint on the anyhow. That has nothing to do with the point, Aaron. Stop that nonsense. Okay, sure. Hey, engineer that's not there. Oh, he's not there. Okay.
understand about me. They're less evident and obvious. And for me, the basic principle of kindness and compassion is going to be my guide. And when posting something about Elliot Page, I do have recourse to the idea of what do I want Elliot Page to feel? Happy, accepted. That's what I want Elliot Page to feel. You know, and if there are aspects of that,
Okay, so that's just one of these weird things, by the way, I got to say that, who cares? Dude, Russell, do you think Elliot Page is looking at these things and going, oh, I really feel something about this? She doesn't care. She got $108 million or something. She ain't paying attention to that. It doesn't affect her life. If anything, the fact that she's expressed and exposed herself, Russell, that's enough. She got it. She is validating herself, and she doesn't need anything more than that, right? I mean, but the truth is does anybody really think that our comment section, that changes the world? No, it's the conversation we're having. You think sticks and stones don't break bones, but words actually hurt you? Look, they can if you allow them to. If anything, words are better for moving the conversation forward and getting ideas into different places. But if you allow the words to drive your physical being, you're just putting yourself in a prison where the words affect you. And you don't have to do that. You really don't. Don't read the comments. But for real, I mean, this is the thing is there's such an exceptionalism in this conversation. Oh, well, she's going to feel something from our comment. No. Are you feeling things from the comments, Russell? Are you feeling things from the comments, Jordan? I don't care. I actually interact with them. I'm the youngest of four boys. You can't throw anything at me that I can't throw right back and own. I think there's a few people that have found that out already. Like, oh yeah, I am. And let me add to that. People don't expect, by the way, greatest offense as a weirdo growing up is when you, and also this is the yes and from improv, is that when people throw like an insult or anything, a punch even, I know how to duck and reflect and deflect and respond and take that energy and kung fu it right back in a way that people are, sometimes I actually forget how much kung fu gee, I have with that. And it does, like Hulk Hogan, knock people across the room sometimes. And you're so mean, even though they started it's for real. This is in real life. I'm not talking about on the internet. Call me an ass for that. But the truth is that's part of the problem, actually, that I'm pointing out in this world, is that people would use a stick of poo out of their prison cell and hit you over the head with it and then not want you to respond. And then when you do respond in kind, equally so, they don't like the bowl they just served out of. And I see this in the conversation between both sides, feeling as if they are higher and more than. Neither one of these guys is higher than more than. They both have their problems and their issues. And I'd say one of the issues with Russell is he's trying to be too nice, and he's allowing this guy to call most of the people on the internet demons. That is a quality quantified. Both of you guys are schmucks right now. Schmucks. Schmuck alert. Schmucks. Wow. Schlemiel and Schlemazel. Schlemazel and Schlemiel. That's the guy who gets spilled on and the guy who spills. Hassenpfeffer Incorporated. We're going to do this. What the hey? Russell Pearl!
And then I'm willing to take the hit.
When you think about your behavior on your YouTube channel, you're spending a lot of time in public criticism, and going after large corporations, going after those who are engaged in fascist collusion. And I think rightly so. I think that you're an extremely useful voice in that regard, and you're a critical voice. And, you're a critical comedic voice, which is a good kind of critical voice, and not exactly compassionate, right? Because you're also using...
See, this is the thing is he's trying to validate his point by creating what I call a shit sandwich. So we're going to put something really nice that you agree with right at the top. And then I'm going to just fill the center for my own and here's the other portion that's really nice on the other side. Now you've forgotten that I just shoved my fist in your ass. Shit sandwich. Russell's loving this. And the only reason he looks that way, like he's fighting it, but he's taking it. He is not pushing back. The exceptionalism is heavy in the air, like the smell of someone who has just eaten 4 meatloafs and let you have it right after dinner. Thick air.
Creativity on the humor side to make your point, and you're doing it in a playful way. And I think that playful criticism is the hallmark of the master critic. The joker and the jester in that regard are master critics. But that's not compassion, right? That's a different virtue. And often
excuse me. Yeah, smoke some more vape. That's not compassion. That's because he doesn't understand compassion. That is compassion. Compassion and reason go hand in hand. Now, if you have an affable sensibility and you're not being mean, that's where compassion comes in. But I don't believe that Jordan Peterson is anything but a mean person. I think that his soul and spirit is so focused on how others are different from him that he doesn't know how similar he is to everybody and how he's the exclusion. He's the hatred. He's the seethingness and problematic behavior, and he's telling you that he is without seeing it because he doesn't look in a mirror except to shave his beard once in a while. That's the weirdest thing about this guy. Is that he's telling you this is how he feels about the world. This is how he's affected by the world. This is how he sees it all. This is how he plays in the world. But it's everybody else. It's not him. And Russell, you're letting me down, brah. Come on, brah. Brah. And I do mean brah. Okay? Josephine Baker? Okay, come on.
Very, very pointed. You do act as a social critic in many, many ways, and you do leaven it with comedy, and I think that's extraordinarily appropriate. It's part of what's given you such a broad voice, and that criticism is absolutely necessary.
Hell
now,
yeah.
let's speak about Elliot Page more specifically. So the first thing I'd like to bring up is the fact that in the UK, the Tavistock Clinic was recently closed, and that was the biggest clinic doing gender transformation surgery that operated in the British world. 1,000 of the 19,000 kids have now launched a lawsuit for medical malpractice. And when Elliot Page went online and showed
By the way, I looked at that before I came on, and I have yet to find in any of the articles about the subject what the definitions of the malpractice suits are and why and how. There's no direct explanation as to, other than there are misgivings of a wide variance of 1,000 out of 19,000. $1,000 out of 19,000. Now, so those complaints are going to range all over the map. The question is it physical malpractice? Is it psychological malpractice? Is it informational malpractice? Which form of malpractice? Because that determines what was actually happening. Did they have a bad doctor there? No, but he'd have you believe by shunting off a whole section of information and giving you the most dastardly portion of it that seems like, oh, it's a great headline to use. And it validates a great fear factor, but if you're not comprehensively thinking about it, then you won't look further than just go, oh, okay. Because it validates his limited opinion that backs up bigotry. And there is nothing in this world that is more insidious than using factual information to back up in a non-cohesive manner, but play it off as if it is connected, bigoted, end result information. Because all this is this guy pressing hate and getting away with it by seeming legitimate with what is otherwise valid information used in a convenient fashion that is not connected. It just feels like it because he puts it in terms that seem connected when they are in actuality not at all.
His or her new chest, she or he got 1.7 million Instagram likes. So then the question is, okay, compassion. You know, I think Elliot Page stepped over the line from victim to perpetrator, because when girls hit puberty, their negative emotion spikes and they develop.
Okay, so now he's going back to their negative emotion spikes. Is this guy an actual psychologist? He's talking about hysteria theory. What? Hysteria theory hasn't been accepted since the 40s. Should be ashamed of himself. And Russell should have been calling him out to be like, what are you talking about? That is not factual at all. Come on, man. Russell Brand is really letting me down in this conversation because he's letting this alt-right modern Nazi claiming to be a psychologist spew nothing less than quantifiable BS. And he's got followers. This is dangerous, folks. Wow.
Image problems, because neurotic, negative, emotional experience for women is extremely tightly tied to body image. And so if you're a girl who is undergoing the hormonal changes that are going to elevate your negative emotion, which is what happens at puberty, you're going to be focused on body image. And if you're an unpopular girl...
By the way, yeah. And if you're an unpopular girl, maybe you're going to want to change... I mean, he has just jumped the shark so far. So transgender association is a chemical and an emotional and a physical balance. It has nothing to do with just not liking yourself. He's trying to associate. This is just like the argument that homosexuals are pedophiles. It's just not an association. It is a false equivalency that's convenient for someone who's in fear state, who doesn't understand it, who doesn't have the capability to look at another person and see them as human. And it's a convenient argument on the side of someone who would have you believe things that aren't true. And he'll just associate them and expect that you're not going to think too long about that. And that comes down to that whole thing of the authoritarian or the totalitarian mind being driven by an ideological zealotry. They don't want you to think too hard about what they're saying, and they want you to really comprehensively just trust everything that they're saying without looking into it for yourself or being an individual. Because they want you in their prison so they can build their tribe up, so there can be more bedazzled poop flung outward. This man is pushing hysteria theory in 2023. Who the hell found this guy? Oh yeah, I did.
And you're awkward socially. The probability that you're going to think something's wrong with your body is almost 100% if you're female.
Okay. So it's almost 100% if you're female, you're going to think something's wrong with your body. But what does that have to do with transgenderism? Transgenderism is something that poses itself across the frame of life. I knew somebody who became transgendered in his 50s. Very smart man. Now woman. Who I believe he's in the process of the chemical change. If I'm not mistaken. But either way, this is just fear that there's something that they don't understand, that it's outside of their zone, and they would use a book written by men to validate at the end of the day. That's what the base of this conversation, and he'll even use the facade of psychology to validate his false reasoning and equivalencies. None of this is true. Women may feel a certain way about their body as they grow, but so do men. That is adolescence. And misusing and misrepresenting that information is the most insidious and conniving portion of all of this that is cynical at best. And if not, it's sickness, a psychopathic sickness on his part. And I would also say it's a bit sick that Russell is not acknowledging or doing anything to kind of stand in the argument's way. What the hell? What the hell, man? Pearl! Russell! Wow.
Can see what makes you angry about it. It's your analysis and it's your opinion that it's a powerful influencer and it's going to lead people to make decisions that are going to be detrimental to their lives. But the evident and diminishes your position. Anger is in the conversation. I think you offer a great deal that is valuable and necessary, but I feel beyond the value and necessity of honesty, authenticity, and information that is underwritten by data and experience, I feel that it creates more opposition to approach a matter like this in the manner that you have done. What are we going to anchor ourselves to ultimately, Jordan, navigating this space? Are we going to be participants in creating more and more ossified and oppositional camps, or are we?
Yes, you already are. Look at the frame of your screen. You're in two different sections. Yeah, well, the Zoom call, of course. But yes, you literally have a left and right. If you turn yourself around, Russell's on the left, and he's not staring at the screen. But you know what I'm saying. They actually are physically, if you turn around and face the way they are, they're on the left and the right. So yes, you are ossifying the situation. You are, by the way, you are separating the two parties. Yes. Use basic, simple language, man. Because although you're highly intellectual and very intelligent, people understand more base metaphor, and I believe when you say, this is BS, and that's true, and this is good, and that's unhealthy, that people understand it in an easier fashion. And excuse me.
To create cartilage between us so that we can move between a room that Jordan Peterson is in and a room that Elliot Page is in and say, look, I believe.
I don't want cartilage with that fool. I'd like a conversation with him. I'd like to extend a sense of reason and communication. I will be cooperative with that fool to a degree. But I don't want cartilage attaching myself to him. I don't need a bat wing called Jordan Peterson. Just one human chicken wing over off to the side. That's weird. Am I wrong? That's weird. I'm probably really wrong for that. But that's weird. That's just some bullshit.
In love, and I know it's complicated, I think you're beautiful and full of love. I really believe in that. And then when I sort of hear people being dismissive of...
Hold on a second. That needs a... I'm sorry. That needs a... Oh... This is like the most insidious white dude on this side, who is not only just been telling you how he doesn't see people as human, but he's the least loving person. I don't think he loves himself. I know you're trying to create a positive reverse shit, like the double down of shit sandwiches where the shit's on the outside. I don't know here, Russell. You're just trying. Look, I'm a lot, but that's way. Just say less. Not in the good way. That's cap, bro. Giving bullshit. I'm sorry. Here we go.
It upsets me. It upsets me. And I see how you arm them. I feel that you arm them by sort of, in their language, dead naming Elliot Page. And I feel like why would you do that? It isn't necessary.
Why would he do
isn't
that?
Necessary.
Russell,
of course.
Russell, I know you're not that simple. Why would he do that? Because he's a hateful, cynical, solipsistic, Neanderthalic, Ubermensch with a psychology degree. He is the classic Nietzsche Superman complex. Why else? He gets juice out of feeling extremely better than everybody else when he is in every way, shape, or form not as much as a human quality as anybody else, because he doesn't see him as the same. He doesn't see himself as similar to any of us. He's somehow better.
It's the statistics you've cited about the Tavistock Clinic appear to speak for themselves. Is there a way that we can handle this that would be more akin to how we might imagine Christ would handle it? Otherwise, what's the point?
Wait, hold on a second. Well, can we imagine how... When you bring a conversation to a religious-based idealism, you spout or cite your religious manual in a debate about interpersonal relationships or anything of the nature, you have just capitulated. You've just given in to a little group of people in a tiny prison, and you have just excluded the majority of the people on the planet. There are less than 1 billion Christians on the planet. Did you know that? The majority of the planet doesn't have a religion. And then there's Hindu, and then there's Muslim. Hindu and Muslim, they go like this for how many more people there are on the earth with that religion. And then way down the list is Christian and Catholic, which are two schisms of the same belief. Slightly different practices. So when you say, oh no, Catholic is totally different. No, it is Christianity. It represents the same group. And way down at the end is the 1% of the world that's Jewish, who seems to be so hated because they're different. Which is, all of this is just prisons fighting prisons. So as soon as you boil it down to some belief system that does relate to Judeo-Christianity, Judeo-Muslim Christianity, then you're immediately excluding most of us. because of your ideal set. And you know what? I don't want to relate it to Christ-like behavior. I want to relate it to human behavior, which should be more compassionate and reasonable and empathetic of one another, because we are the tribe of one species, human. That in the end of the day, if you cut us, do we not bleed the same effing color? So Russell, you just totally let me down, man. That's just some BS. You're trying to relate on his terms. Don't fall to his simple, based, childhood, adolescent, forceful terms where you got to fight at his level for anything to be understandable, because all it is babble at that point. Can we just have a conversation where we have Spider-Man-like qualities? That's what that sounds like to me. And to most people who don't believe in those things. Can we just have a conversation where we have more Harry Potter-like qualities? The Easter Bunny holds such power over us. Easter Bunny is king. That's what it sounds like. It's nonsense to somebody who doesn't see those things in the same way. So cut it out. It doesn't belong in this conversation about dismantling the mental prisons. It's disingenuous. Boo!
Christianity. What's the point of Christianity if we're not going to embody Christ in our behavior?
Everybody who's operating in the online space.
What's the point in Christianity if we're not going to operate as Christ? Well, first off, what's the point in it in the first place when it starts the majority of wars and is not the majority belief on the planet? What's the point in it anyways when it believes it's and consistently pushes that other people are different and less than? So trying to have that conversation about a belief that doesn't project or do the things that it would have most people believe is capitulating, giving in to something that is literally just forcing people into a prison for the sake of having that prison. Control via the obelisk. And I'm saying, folks, let's take this down. We don't need to live in those limitations. It's nice to keep the philosophies because those philosophies do help us. But believing in something imaginary as if that's going to control our behaviors, and if you need that, you weren't going to control your behavior in the first place. You too can pull the wool over your own eyes. When in reality, you got to be accountable as a human for the humans around you and for your own behavior and beliefs. So that means if you're believing nonsense, you got to say to yourself, man, that's a lot of nonsense, and it hurts people. It hurts the world we live in, and it stops us all from enjoying the joy of sentient life.
That we're operating is trying to get the tone right? And you do that in part by paying attention to the audience, and you do that by trying to see how people are responding, and not in a way that's pandering.
Well, except for you. Except for you, because the audience has been responding to you in a way where they're like, over and over, and you're like, but I'm right, and the audience is like, yeah. I can't, my head, yeah. I just, we're pretty much at the end anyway. So like and subscribe. Make sure to like and subscribe Russell Brand's page. That's, it's just Russell Brand. All right, cool. Anyhow, I'm so glad you could be here with us. I appreciate you joining me. I know I'm a long talker, but it's important that we break down the prisons. And these prisons are built by our own minds. And people would sell you on these beliefs. And I ask you again, who benefits from it but a tiny group of people that don't live in that rule system? And what is that rule system? It's known as the obelisk. And at the top of the obelisk is a benben, a pyramid made up of a group of people who control the way we live for their own benefit. So I say over and over again, and I really reach out to you when I say this, I hope every single one of you, after liking and subscribing my page, takes the time to just reflect internally and please look up!